Hi, Jody. Let's see. Sorry.
Hello.
Somehow I managed to go to the wrong meeting before I came to this meeting. So now I'm in the right meeting. So that is good. And here comes everybody. Great. Hey, Jill. Hey, Chrissy. Let's see. I am gonna switch this to this.
Oh my gosh, Chrissy, I looked at you and I thought, did I ever write her back? But I did. Okay. I thought,
No,
oh no,
I just didn't write you back.
that's okay. No, and you didn't need to, but I thought, oh my gosh, did I ever address that email? I did. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Of course. No, of course.
That sounds like most of my last month and a half.
Really?
Did I just
Oh my
say?
God. Oh, actually, Steve, I spoke with people from Apple yesterday. And I was like, oh, you don't really want to talk to me. You really want to talk to our PD coordinator. So I'm going to do an introductory email to you. So,
Cool.
yeah. But I had missed an email from them like from May because just the way the email account kept growing in one direction. I'm like, I'm so sorry. So,
I
but
did that. I just recently got back to somebody that had written to me in like August, and I was like, I can't believe I missed this, but
yeah.
hey, it's October. Ah, let's see. So it's a little after 7. So I'm going to say we might as well get things rolling because I think we've got plenty to share.
Okay, great.
And I think people might be showing up as we go. So we'll kind of just play it by ear. We'll see how things go here. But I believe right now, can you all see the slide? Yeah. Okay, great. I'm sharing that. So let me just go through a couple of little intro things for the Jody, really, because I think everybody else knows this because they've been here before. But so we're doing an NJASL swap meet, and basically this is a chance for people to get together and share ideas, share resources. Hopefully we bring something and we take something away too. So everybody was invited to share their a book or more than one book on a blank slide. And I think we've got several folks that have shared some stuff in here, so that's going to be great. So I'll start off the sharing by putting myself on the spot and going first so that, nobody has to feel pressured. And if you want to share stuff you put on here, great. Or even if it's not on here and you want to share it, that's fine too. If you don't want to share, that's okay. But hopefully everybody comes away with a couple of things they can use. So, sorry, my wife is out, but she told me I have to keep my phone handy because she's out. And she just texted me that she had some good news. So that's good. Sorry, that's if you hear quacks, that's my wife. So yeah, so everybody could take a slide. They look like this and put whatever kind of stuff you wanted to put on them. And when we're done with our PD event, I'll send out an email to all the participants, and there's going to be a short quiz sort of a thing. You fill it out, and you'll get a PD certificate for 1 hour of PD from NJASL. And I think that's everything we need to get things started. So let's get on with the show, shall we? I did put a table of contents in here because I know we've got some different grade levels that are represented. So I figured this would let people kind of see the things they really want to see. But I definitely wanted to take some time to I figure we'll go through all of it and people can kind of pick out the stuff that's going to work well for them. So I tried to share something in every category so that nobody would have to feel on the spot. So I'll kick it off by talking about Sir Simon Super Scarer. I really enjoyed this book. It's not much of a scary book, but it's got a ghost, Sir Simon, and he's so excited because he's finally going to get to haunt some people. But when he thinks it's going to all go nice and easy and he's going to do the things ghosts usually do, it actually turns out that the kid who lives in the house finds this all fascinating. And so it doesn't really go the way he wants it to. And it's really cute. I mean, I enjoyed the art. I thought the story had lots of little bits that were there for an older audience. So like when you're reading it with kids, there's something for the adults as well as the kids. So I love that kind of a story. This one hit a lot of points for me. So that was one I brought for scary. So Jill, if you want, do you want to share what you brought us?
Sure. So these are all, like I said, like not terribly scary ghost stories. I happen to love both Mac Barnett and Christian Robinson, so I was happy to be able to include one of theirs. And in both Leo and Gustavo, and even in There's a Ghost in the House, like the ghosts really Well, there are characters who are looking for friends and end up like friending the ghost. And in Leo, he doesn't even know he's a ghost. So he's like so upset when the new owners of the house come in and they don't know. Like they're scared by him. So he leaves and then he finally meets a girl who recognizes him, and wants to engage with him. And there is, I think from like 2015 National Book Festival, a link I put on the cover to Mac Barnett, Christian Robinson, like Kwame Alexander, and somebody else all being kind of interviewed together, which is kind of neat. Gustavo too, it's so sweet. Oh, and then this one, the We Are Grateful. It's like silhouette. I forget exactly how to pronounce it, which is why you can go on, Steve. That's sorry, that's okay. It's Rocco Scano interviewing Tracy Sorrell, and she there's a link on that book as well. So she is of the Cherokee Nation, and so she kind of talks. She shares just about like the heritage there. Both of these books were challenged because they do kind of touch upon, just some of the history of the Native Americans, and the unpleasant history, but the focus is truly the celebrating and the joy of what remains in the communities. So they're both really great books. Thanks.
I love that. Boy, those sound great. So Beth can't be here with us, but she did put a couple of titles on here that she thought were really good ones. I don't feel qualified to speak to them because I don't know anything about them. But we do have some titles here that would probably be worth checking out.
So if you don't mind, so that's her again. So that's Tracy Sorrell again in Powwow Day. And in Encounter, Michaela Goad, she was the first Indigenous American to win a Caldecott. And so she got a Caldecott Gold for the water protectors. Then she got an honor. So, I mean, she's fantastic too.
Love that.
I think
Thank
also
you.
encounter a lot of teachers like that to use it because it's a way to kind of offset the Columbus Day thing, especially like if your school district still has off and calls it Columbus Day versus Indigenous Peoples Day. And so it's kind of a way to give an introduction into like the true history. So I know a lot of teachers like that one.
Awesome. Thank you. Beth also shared some Halloween ones, A Spoonful of Frogs and Hardly Haunted. And again, I don't know anything about these. If anybody wants to share something about them, please feel free. But okay, that's okay. But I'm going to guess that they are some really great titles because I know Beth really knows her stuff. So that's awesome. Chrissy, do you want to share something about what you brought us here?
So, I actually have a lot of students in my school that don't celebrate Halloween. So there's that fine line of finding something that interests the other kids, and is Halloween-ish, but not full on Halloween. So, although this is an older book, I really love Pumpkin Jack. I've loved it since I was a preschool teacher. And if you're not familiar with it, it starts with a jack-o'-lantern a boy has carved for Halloween, and it's actually the day after Halloween. So it's a nice, actually beginning of November thing, which is kind of a lull sometimes. So it starts right after Halloween, where he's got this pumpkin, this jack-o'-lantern, and his mom makes him get rid of it because it's going to get all disgusting. And so she makes him put it out just get rid of it. So rather than throw it in the trash, he puts it out in the garden and then just keeps periodically coming back to it. And it's decomposing, and then snow is covering it, and then spring comes, and there's a sprout growing. And I actually forgot to put the other book in there, but there's a book called Rotten. And it's really awesome. It's this like that story, but it is visuals of a pumpkin decomposing, and it's told through 13 voices, it says, because it's the voices of the different things. Like I'm gonna have to add it in because it's really cool. It's like a mouse that's eating at it, then it's a squirrel, then it's like different animals, and it's the voices of them, then it's the at one point it's the mold, and the kids are blown away by it because it is the mold that makes penicillin. So it's penicillin. And so then it's like explaining to them that they've probably had this as an antibiotic. And so it's really interesting. And then I put in a link to, this was just a teacher that had used it before in a similar manner that I would. You can put it outside if you have like a garden space, but if you don't, you can literally just put it in a container in your room, like in the library, wherever, like for the whole year, and just watch it decompose and be super gross. Obviously, it's not going to grow into another pumpkin there unless you throw in some soil and get that process going. But it's still, that's something they can check on all the time. And, you know, that could even be something that they're drawing a picture of it each time they come to library, or they're doing, you know, something that they do it. And then just because my kids love these, I have pumpkin gut slime. So sometimes before I've carved a pumpkin, I make slime in it. And then I carve it. For the video there, it was summertime, so I didn't have a pumpkin. I used a watermelon. Because my kids, when they were little, wanted a jack-o'-lantern outside, like year round. And so I found different things to make it of each season. And so summer was watermelon. But anyway, so that's pumpkin jack. And like I said, it really works for me because it's not Halloween and I don't have to have any kids excluded in that.
Chrissy, I have to know what vomiting jack-o'-lantern means.
So basically, it's just, it's actually, you'll see if you watch the video, there's a thing where I talk about, that's actually my grandmother's like nice crystal that it's sitting on, but I needed something to put it on. And it was like, you know, I don't think she realized when she passed away and left it to me that I'd be using it for vomiting jack-o'-lantern, but it was perfect size. So it's basically just you carve a jack-o'-lantern and then you put baking soda down in its mouth, and then I usually use a squeeze bottle, or like, you know, you can get it like the ketchup squeeze bottles or something like that, and fill it with vinegar and food coloring, and then it just throws up whatever, you know, green or red, whatever you want it to be, that it starts throwing up out of there. And so it just fizzes. So the kids love to just come and squirt stuff in it, and it just fizzes out of its mouth.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that. Thank you. How about you want to tell us about full moon lore?
Oh, sure. So full moon lore, are you on that one? Because I'm not seeing that one. I'm like trying to remember. Yeah. Oh, okay. So full moon lore is similar. If you know, there's also the book 13 Moons on a Turtle's Back. My students don't like that one as much. I think it's because it's like more of a long poem for each moon, whereas this one is more of rhyming, just, you know, kind of bouncy text as you're going through. But they love waiting to hear like their birthday month, what their moon is, and what it's called. So they're really big into that. And both of those are links, like the actual pictures. So the full moon lore one, I think, is a link. I think both of them are links to my slideshows. So whenever I read a book, I turn it into an actual, like a full Google slideshow, so that no one's like, I can't see the pictures, I can't, you know, whatever. So it's always behind me on a screen and I'm holding it just to, you know. And then sometimes for my either my special ed students or my students that need a little help, you know, my bilingual students, I might also use a pointer or use the mouse to kind of almost like sing along, go along with the words as I'm reading. So they're getting that reinforcement. But anyway, full moon lore they really love. So it's basically the Native American names for the moon's months. And then it also mentions the blue moon. And so that's where the 13 moons comes from, because there's a Native American legend that if a turtle has 13 moons on its back. And I do have a turtle shell that I bring in, and they see that it's exactly, almost every turtle has 13. And then I forget actually what the number is around, because there's also another thing for the little ones around it that works out to something too. I can't remember what that is right now, but there's lore there. So that is a link to a slideshow, and then each of those words are linked. So the one is a link to Native American moon names, explaining like all different tribes, their names, because they don't all have the same names. Full moon lore uses like the most common names. And then the turtle is actually a link to a coloring sheet. And then there's a link to the book as well, 13 Moons on a Turtle's Back. So that's just all my stuff I use in class.
Awesome. And I think there's one more here.
This, I didn't know where to put this, because what this actually is, and this is probably easier if you actually could click on it. I don't know if you can in there. So this is like a digital book tasting. So it's something that I've used like during COVID, like we could do it that way, or even I use it with my classes. So this is one explaining the American Indian Library Association's thing. And so then what this is when kids click on the book in the middle, it actually like tells them, it goes to the author's page usually, to tell you about the author and stuff. When they click on Amazon, they go there and they can read the first chapter. And when they click on Destiny Discover, it takes them to our catalog where they can put it on hold. So that's how they like taste the book, is Amazon gives them the little taste and then Destiny lets them put it on hold. So those are all just different books I talk about. And I actually forgot to include it in there, but when I do it in person, they have like a little worksheet where they circle like thumbs up, thumbs down, or maybe if they're interested in it. And then they keep that for when they're not sure, although most of them lose it. So one of the things I was considering doing is actually keeping files or keeping like a thing where I keep them. So on a day when they're not sure what they want to get, I'll be like, oh, remember this book you were interested in? Like here, you circled this that you thought a thumbs up for that one. Why don't we see about that one? But anyway, so that's just the book tasting.
That's awesome. Thanks. And I think that's all of our lower grade ones, unless anybody wants to share something else out right now. Give it a second in case anybody wants to jump in. All right, then I think we are going to go on to our early readers. And this is not quite my area of expertise, but I recently read something that sort of kind of fit, so I threw it in here. It's a little more, it's kind of like an upper early reader, but over the summer, we had a little middle grades reading book club, and we read Ham Helsing 1, Vampire Hunter. And this book was so cute. The illustrations are just so wonderful, and there's lots of little humorous bits throughout it. So like it's spooky in that there's, you know, he's going after a vampire, but the vampire turns out to be a nice person, and the actual bad guy is a different person altogether than the town thinks it is. And it's very cute. It's very funny. I was laughing out loud as I read this. And as I was reading it, my wife was going, what are you laughing at? She came over, was looking over my shoulder, and she was like, that is so cute. Give me that when you're done with it. And so she read it too. And that's not really her speed. So I know it's got to be a good one if she enjoyed it too. So lots of humor, low level frights. It's got a little bit of like cartoony violence in a couple of places, but it's not really a scary book I wouldn't say it was a scary book in any way. So tossing that one out there as something people might want to check out. Jill, you want to tell us about Mr. Shivers?
Sure. So I discovered this last year when Max Brallier was our virtual visiting author. And so there are 4 of these in the series, and they are so reminiscent of like that In a Dark, Dark Room. They're actually really creepy, and they're written for kindergarten and first. And when he spoke to us, he said they're going to stop because the intended audience actually, like, the stories are a little too creepy for them. Like one's like this kid's coughing on a hair and coughing on a hair, and they finally go, he's like, I have a hair in my throat. They go to the doctor, they pull out like a rat. It's wild. But anyway, the kids love it, and it's just enough of a scare, like for my first graders who, when they want to pick up the bigger horror books, I'm like, this is what's good for you. So that's a good one. And they're just that right mix of like really short, creepy enough. And so it was fun. And the book wrangler, I don't know if you guys follow the book wrangler, he's going to be Mr. Shivers for Halloween. So I was like, oh, that's it. So it's definitely more in the mainstream than I thought. So they're a lot of fun. They're good. And then this one, I happen to adore John Clausen. And a lot of what I love about his books are like, you just say, what actually just happened there? You know, so this one, and what I love about this too is that, and I have it there, like, there was a meme that was going around for a while about how great librarians are. And he said, you know, I read this story in a library in Alaska and I couldn't remember it. So I called the library, and 2 hours later, I had the PDF in my inbox. Librarians should rule the world. And then it turns out to be this story. And it's Troilian. It's an old Troilian tale or something, like some kind of folk tale. But what I think is really cute is, first of all, he said, like, it was, when he got it, it was nothing at all like he remembered it. So he wrote the ending that he had constructed in his own head. But it's just funny because this girl, we don't know why she runs away. She runs away through a forest in the winter. She comes upon a house. There's only a skull. She knocks on the door. The skull's like, it's going to, you know, what do you need? She's like, can I come in? It's going to take me a little while to get down there. And then she befriends the skull. And the skull is terrified because a headless skeleton, tries to catch him every night. So like she protects the skull from the skeleton. And then while he's sleeping, she like breaks the bones, chops them up, sets them up. Like, it's a little wild. And then in the end, they're just like friends. And you're just like, what is that? But I can't not love him. So anyway, I had to recommend it. So
I am totally with you on John Klassen. I love his stuff. I have not heard of this one, so I'm definitely gonna have to pick that up.
yeah, it was like this summer, I think it was released. So
Huh.
yeah.
Nice. Anybody else have an early reader they want to share? All
I
right.
unfortunately loaned all my all my picture books and early readers. I loaned them to there's a teacher that's out. She had appendicitis and she's out and was like struggling. And so she sent me a list of all these books and I'm like, I'll get them from the public library, but in the meantime, I'll bring all mine in. So my entire like Halloween, spooky, any of that bin is in their classroom right now.
That's okay. We appreciate you already shared some great stuff with us. So, okay, middle grades is my bread and butter. So I had a couple of things that I wanted to share here. So the Cobra song by Supriya Kelkar is one that I actually got a preview copy of so I could kind of check it out. And I'm going to say it's a weird story in that it doesn't neatly fit into any particular box. It starts out as just straight up realistic fiction about this sixth grader who she's from an Indian family who has a history of being these incredible singers, and her grandmother is this like world famous singer, and her mother is this amazing singer and teaches people how to sing, and the girl is learning how to sing as well. But she also has a lot of anxiety, and just like everything can set her off. She really has a hard time just interacting with the world, and it starts to make it hard for her to sing. And so that's going on. Her grandmother comes to visit from India. And when her grandmother comes, a couple of other people that they know also come over from India, along with a stranger. And the stranger becomes their neighbor, living with one of their other neighbors who they've known for forever. And something weird starts to happen when this new person shows up, and things start to take this kind of really strange direction. And it's all realistic fiction for the first half of the book, maybe 3/4. And then things start to get a little like fantasy, like magical realism stuff starts to creep in, and some mythology starts to creep in. And it's really interesting, and it's creepy. Like the way these little details come in, it's very like lower middle school creepy, how this mythological, I'm going to ruin the book. I'm sorry. But the neighbor, you can plug your ears if you don't want to hear it, la, 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 la. But the neighbor, the new neighbor turns out to be a cobra that has taken human form, that because it's trying to get revenge on the grandmother and the mother, because back in India, the grandmother killed the mate of the cobra that has become human. So now it has come to America to basically to curse this family. And so this becomes like the whole last quarter of the book becomes this whole like, is this real? Is it just in the girl's head? What's going on? And then it turns out there is mystical stuff going on. It's really interesting. And it kind of, the creepiness creeps up on you as you're reading the book. And I really like that about it. It's not a usual kind of realistic fiction story that it seems to be when it first starts out. So for me, I really enjoyed that it's got a little bit of something different to it. I love this book. Oh my gosh, I love this book. The Second Chance of Benjamin Waterfalls is about a 7th or 8th grade kid, and he's always getting in trouble. His parents are separated. He lives with his mom, but he's always getting in trouble, and so much trouble that he ends up in court regularly. And so he's in court at the beginning of the book, and the judge is Benjamin figures the judge is going to say, oh, well, you're a minor, so it's not a big deal, and we'll let you off with a slap on the wrist. But instead, the judge is going to put him in juvie. And so the mom says, well, can we make a deal that he will go live with his father for the summer, because he needs to learn about his Native American heritage, and his father lives on a reservation, and we're separated, but this might be a good chance for him to learn something. And so the judge agrees as long as the kid stays on the reservation all summer. The kid hates his dad because his dad abandoned them. So he's got all this anger, and he goes and he's living with his dad, who now has a new girlfriend, and there's sort of like a stepchild getting involved in the situation. And there's also, the kid ends up working with the daughter of the tribe's chief, and she is really well respected in the community. She's got this amazing ability to kind of talk to people and help them, even though she's only like a middle school kid. But she also always wears this mask, this weird kind of like ski mask sort of a thing. And she won't tell him why. And so as the story goes along, like he learns about his heritage, he learns about why, he kind of learns to deal with some of his anger. He learns about why this girl wears this mask and how she's so good at talking to people. And there's this one moment, and it's just one moment in this whole book where maybe something magical happens. And it's kind of up to you to decide, like, did this really happen? Or is it just in his head that he thinks this happened? And I love this book, the way this kid comes to terms with some difficult things and sort of grows over the course of the story. I found it just a really engaging read, a really fun read. So, and one more I got to throw out there is The True Meaning of Smek Day. This one's a little bit older, but I really enjoyed it. It's now a Netflix movie, I think, or a Prime Video movie. And it's basically about aliens come to Earth, and they are way smarter than us. They have way better technology, and they say, okay, we're taking over. So y'all, if you want to stay here, you got to move to this area that we've set aside for you. And all the humans are going to live in this area. And so they start moving all the humans out of where they used to live and saying, nope, you got to move over here. And this girl gets separated from her mom, and she's a single mom. So the girl has to try and get back, and ends up her mom gets relocated across the country, and she's got to try and figure out a way to get across the country by herself. And she's like 13 or 14. So she's got to figure out, how do you drive a car? How do I drive a car so that I don't get caught? And then one of the aliens ends up, she kind of like runs into one of these aliens, and he wants to find out what it's like to be on Earth. So he starts following her around, and they end up having sort of like this, almost like a buddy comedy sort of a situation going on. And it's, if you read the story just as the story, it's a fun adventure story, but it is absolutely 100% clearly meant as sort of an allegory of colonialism in America. Because at the end, one of the characters is Native American, and he's talking about, boy, isn't it really a shame when you can't live where you want to live? Like, it's very clearly like meant as a little bit of a commentary, but it's also just an enjoyable story on top of that. So I really liked it. It's one I try and talk up with my students. It's a little bit of a thicker book, but it's not dense. It's a pretty quick read. So it looks bigger than I think it really is. I think that intimidates students sometimes. So I got to work on my pitch for it a little bit, but I found it really enjoyable, really fun. It's got some funny moments in it. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong slide. I've got two screens going. And so I was looking at the one, but didn't have the actual thing. So yeah, True Meaning of Smek Day. There we go. So that's that one. And then again, Beth Raff shared a couple of things with us. Scary Stories for Young Foxes, I love. So it looks like we've got a series here. If anybody knows these and wants to speak to them, that'd be great. Just the titles sound really good, I gotta say. And then, Chrissy, do you want to talk about Skeleton Creek?
Oh, I guess I'll have to fix that video since it shows an error. So this is actually, again, an older book, like 2012 or so, I think it came out, but it's really, really interesting. Like, my kids get into it because it's told, well, one, it's kind of this epistolary style because it's a one boy's journal. So it's boy Ryan, and you read his journal, but then you'll get to a section where his friend Sarah, she does a video, and you need to have the password to see the video. So there's a website the kids go to and they watch the video. So you have to go there. And so that element kind of draws them in, that it's like, in order to, really follow the book, you have to go and watch the video. So then they just go in the video. Again, I'll have to change out this video here because it's really spooky. When they watch that, they're full on like sucked in. But then what I really like, even more so than the Skeleton Creek series, is actually something that the author Patrick Carman offers. If you click on the Skeleton Creek book cover, should take you, he's got these things called Frightables on the Skeleton Creek website. So the Frightables are a story, so it's a similar concept. You read the story and then they watch the ending, and some of them are like really spooky. Like, I know we did Mr. Mason's Jars, but then the kids were really into it. I use this with my 5th graders, so this is really upper, like I say 5th and like middle school, because I know middle schoolers like lose it, but I know like Knight Rider, we did that one, and it's basically this boy who he's like meets this girl and she's like really good at skateboarding, and so he like wants to go on a date with her. So again, I feel like this is more middle school or so, but again, I use it with fifth graders. But he wants to go on a date with her, so they're like texting and stuff, and they're supposed to meet at this diner or whatever, and she's like late and she's not coming. Like he gets a text at one point, she's on her way, but it's like this rainy whatever night and she's not there. And then all of a sudden he sees her like kind of glide by like on her skateboard, but she doesn't come in. So he runs out to talk to her, and she just seems really spooky like, and she's just talking kind of monotone like and stuff. And then as she's saying, well, will you come with me? And he's like, well, yeah, I'll come with you, like, sure. And then all of a sudden it's like you see she's like a ghost, and she pushes in front of a car, and next to you it's, so you just hear like the screeching of tires and the siren and stuff. And so she was killed on her way there. She's a ghost, and like drags him down with her. And so the kids like freak out. But they get super excited, because then what I do is I put one story each day on Google Classroom, and then they go and watch the ending. So I'll put the link to the ending. I mean, obviously if they could figure it out and figure out how to get to the site themselves, but I just post just the ending. So I'll put just the story as a PDF and then just the ending. And so it's a good way, especially I still think October is still fairly beginning of the year, that I build engagement on Google Classroom, and that because I don't know about you guys in terms of Google Classroom or anything, but I use mine more as a message board. So I like them to not go there, because I don't give them homework. So I like them to be able to go there and like check and see like, oh, this week is book fair and whatever, or go there because again, my Destiny Discover tutorials and all that kind of stuff is there. The link to the Get Library catalog is there, to our databases. So I like to kind of have an incentive for them to go on there. So that was a great way to really get them involved in the Google Classroom. But the only thing you do have to check is the endings were blocked by our filters for the school. So I had to get them unblocked in advance. And then it was a whole issue. They got blocked again, and it took me months to get them unblocked. So it was probably like January by the time they could watch the endings like at home, not at school. But so actually that's something I need to look into if I want to do it with fifth graders this year. I have to see if they're already unblocked or not, because that was just, they were so upset they couldn't see the ending.
I love it. Pro tip. It's
Yeah.
a great idea though for building that engagement and getting them to come to the site to see what's going on. Love that. Thanks. Anybody have another middle grade title they want to share?
I actually did have one that I didn't have time to put on there.
I have
So
that. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard good things.
Oh, so I haven't read all of it. I've read some of the stories, just because it's like always checked out at the school library. So I was kind of, I think the only reason it wasn't checked out is that I was out sick last week, and so we had a sub in. My first time in 4 years ever having a sub, but the shelving was like horrible. And so it was not where it belonged. So yeah, so this is Hide and Don't Seek. And I actually met the author this weekend at the Children's Book Festival in Princeton and got her new book. But this one is really nice because it says Hide and Don't Seek and Other Very Scary Stories, because it's lots of short stories. So I really like that, because one of the really neat things about it is a great learning opportunity, besides the fact that it's spooky. But if you wanted to use it in lessons, it's great for showing different literary styles. So some of them are poems. So it's written in verse. Some of them are more regular traditional narrative, but then there's also ones that are more that epistolary. There's some that are letters. There's some that, of course, the kids love, that are all text messages back and forth. So it's really just great to show that it can be different styles. And I love, again, kind of tying that in with Skeleton Creek, that you can have something that it could be a video. Maybe you make a story and then your ending is a Flipgrid, or maybe you're writing a story and it is all text messages, because I feel like that does draw them in, that it doesn't have to be, reading doesn't have to be boring, but writing doesn't have to be either. It can be any style you want, and they're all acceptable. And every author has their own style, or multiple styles in this case. So this is a really really good one I like.
Nice. That's going on my short list. All right. Thanks. Anybody else?
So I'm so sorry. I can't see anybody anymore. I don't know what happened with my internet, but so I did realize, Chrissy, which one you were showing, and I met her this weekend too. Steve, you might remember her. Chrissy, you have to say it's like Annie Morose or something, right? She was part of our
Yeah, like
virtual conference one year, Steve.
Okay.
yeah,
So I feel like you might have connected with her.
that's how I knew about the book. I couldn't remember where I had met her before that was online, but she mentioned her book and I was like immediately, because my kids are constantly asking me for where's the scary books, where's the spooky ones, and
Yeah.
which is why I had to get all the like little scary labels because I'm not genrefied in our library,
Mm.
so I have to say like just go and look for spooky or scary labels, and just go down fiction. But anyway, I remember her mentioning it, but I couldn't remember where it was, but I know it was the author that was talking about it. And so yeah, I guess it was an NJASL event. And then yeah, this weekend she was at the book festival and I was so excited to see her book. And her new one is not as scary stories, but it still seems really, really good. Although she does have a new one that's perfect actually for middle school and older, because it does involve a murder at like a summer camp,
Mm.
and it seemed like really spooky that I thought my kids would like it, and it's like a mystery and stuff. But she said it really is more for older kids because I think the characters are like 13, 14. So I decided, okay, I won't go with that one, but
I'll have to go digging because somewhere you just made me realize that somewhere I've got a slideshow that I got in Texas. There was a group that did just middle grade scary stuff, middle grade horror, and they had like 60 or 70 books and authors and like people who just write tons of great scary stuff for middle graders. I'll have to track that down and see if I can add it in here and get a link to it.
yeah, that would be awesome because they're always asking. So my go-tos are I keep in a special section the scary stories to tell in the dark. So I have that series. So I keep those in their own section just because otherwise they get lost because they're 398.2 and that's like everything. And then also right near there is the fiction section. So the very first thing on the first shelf is K.R. Alexander. And so that's all spooky stuff too. So those are my go-tos to show them scary stories.
Nice. Anybody else got something they want to share for middle grade?
I do. You probably all know about these, but Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. I have not read it, but all my YouTube booktubers who do middle grade can't say enough about the series. It's a trilogy, and they can't say enough about it. And I haven't read it. Yeah, and so that's one that I didn't hear. And then for Native American, Ancestor Approved. That's also a middle grade. It's a handful of stories about different Native stories, and the one that I remember specifically was a boy that went to his first powwow and what that was like for him. And so there's a bunch of other stories too, but I have not read them all. But that's one of them. That's middle grade. Oh, I didn't say who was it. Cynthia Smith is the author.
Yep. For the small spaces, I actually just recently got it and it's now a quartet. So there's actually 4 books.
Oh, 4.
And I just got it because a student had asked for small spaces, and I think it was their middle school sibling that had read it. And so then they wanted the next one because I guess the middle school only had the first one. So I just got the 4. And then I saw in the chat that Jill mentioned Will Mara because his Twisted series. I bought that at the NJASL conference last year, his whole series, and my kids really do like that one. Unfortunately, because it's thin paperback, I have to really display it, otherwise they don't tend to notice it on the shelf. So I really do have to display it. So I have like old like DVD cases to hold DVDs, but I put the books in front facing instead, and just I have like a spotlight I put above it, and I just say spotlight on, and whatever's the theme that time. But they do really like those if I shove them in their face. But otherwise those are really good. And I've heard really good things through NJASL through the emails and stuff about his author visits too. So that might be a good thing, for next year if you're thinking like to try to tie in with October and spooky time and stuff and bring him in for a visit.
And his prices seem very reasonable. I'm trying to line up a visit with him, and it was, I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it was really reasonable for him spending an entire day at the school and doing several different presentations. So if you're looking for an author visit, that might be one to check out. Anybody else got another middle grade title they want to toss in? I'd forgotten about Small Spaces. That I'm trying to read my way through my library, and that's one of the ones that is in my someday I'm going to get to this list. But that's a great one. I got to get back to that. I put those titles in as slides so we can come back and fill in some stuff on them so we won't forget them. All right, if we're good on middle, then let's move on to young adult. This is another one that I had quite a bit of, and Elat Zoe, I would put it's in my middle grade collection, but I kind of put it in YA because I don't know why. I don't know why I put it in YA. It's really more of a middle grade read, or I mean, it's great for YA. It's about a high school age Native American girl who can see spirits. She lives in a world that is just like ours, but the world that she lives in, the supernatural is an accepted thing. Like it's supernatural is real. And she's able to see the spirits of dead people and creatures. And you find this out in the first couple of pages when she's training her dog, and her dog runs through the wall because her dog has died, but she can see the dog's spirit. And so the dog is still there. So she hasn't lost her dog. And so it's kind of sweet in that way. But so her cousin dies in what seems to be a car accident, but he comes to her and says, no, I was murdered. You need to let people know this. And no one believes that this is what actually happened because it looks like it was an accident. So she and some friends end up going to try and figure out what happened to him. And they stumble on this much bigger thing that's going on. The characters, the main characters are so wonderful. They're so close and loving, best friends and family, just like really supporting each other. The main character is, she specifically states at one point that she's asexual, that she's aromantic, asexual. And it's not really a big thing. It just kind of gets mentioned at one point in something she's talking about, and then it never comes up again. But it's just, I think it's nice to have some representation that, kids can see themselves. But it's also just a really fun story, and it's got some real spooky, creepy vibes to it as it goes along. So it's got a little bit of everything. It's got a little bit of Native American. It's got a little bit of spooky. Speaking of spooky, The Left-Handed Booksellers of London by Garth Nix. Garth Nix writes some great middle grades and YA books, and this one is a creepier one. It is about a teenager who has just gotten out of high school and basically gets pulled into this world of supernatural creatures that are kind of trying to take over the world, basically. And so there's an organization called the Left-Handed Booksellers of London that stands up against all these creatures that are trying to take over the world. And she gets kind of pulled into their things that are going on sort of against her will, because it turns out that her father that she's been trying to find was somehow involved in all of this, and she had no idea. So it's fun, it's creepy, it's a really enjoyable story. Pet, this is absolutely 100% YA, like this is upper YA. It deals with some pretty heavy topics. It's sort of fantasy. It's set in sort of a future time, unspecified, but it's supposed to be Earth, our world. It's supposed to be America. And the main character is a teen who somehow is able to see this strange creature that comes through one of her mother's paintings into the real world. And it's sort of like this nightmarish sort of a creature. And she's trying to figure out why it's there and what it wants. And basically, it turns out that monsters aren't made by what they look like. Monsters are what they do. And so maybe the humans are the monsters in some cases. And in this case, a human is a horrible monster. And she ends up having to sort of deal with that a little bit. But it's a super short book. It's really, really thin. It's a quick read. But this author just throws so many neat ideas, like any one of which could have been expanded into its own story, into a novel. And it's just like in the first 10 pages, here's like 15 different world building ideas that you could build an entire novel on. And we're just going to kind of blow past them all to get to the thing I want to talk about. And it's just, I found it fascinating how how many ideas this author's just throwing out there and setting up her world with. And there is also a sequel now, I believe. But this one does come with some trigger warnings for child abuse and sexual assault. So it's definitely got some heavy stuff to it, but it's amazingly written and it's a quick read. The Mechanical, this book creeped me out. This book creeped me way the heck out. And I like horror books. I like scary stuff. This one, whew, I thought it was going to be just a YA kind of fluff story, but it gets into some real, well, it's got a lot of cursing and sex in it, so it's definitely an upper YA, but it also gets into some really like interesting, weird blends of genres and ideas. It's got some fantasy. There's magic in this world, but it's also science fiction because they use the magic to sort of like power a steampunk sort of a world. But there's also some historical fiction because it's set like, what if the Dutch hadn't lost control of America? Because for a while, the Dutch owned New York, and that kind of ended up not working out for them. But what if it had gone a different way? So it's got some like alternate history. And there's an element to it that is horror that comes up partway into the story. You find out what's going on with these creatures that are called mechanicals, and they're magically powered robots, basically. But the magic that's powering them, when they explained what was going on, I was completely creeped out, and I just continued to be creeped out for the rest of the book. It's this really upsetting idea, which is beautifully executed in the book. So if you like really just something that's going to put your teeth on edge, this might be it. And Firekeeper's Daughter, holy smokes, is this a good book? This is an amazing book. It's won some awards. I don't have the one that's got the award stickers on it, but deals with some real heavy topics, but it's about a high school student. She's just graduated. She and her friends are at a graduation party. One of her friends, her best friend, ODs. And when the friend dies, it brings this investigation. They're Native American. They live on tribal land. And so there's sort of like authorities that can't really do everything they would normally do because it's reservation land and the laws don't apply the same way. And there's an examination of like, who's involved in this drug thing that's going on, and like, what does it mean to be part of a community? And there's a lot of just interesting, intricate storytelling here, and it's beautifully told, beautifully written. So yeah, I have suggested this several times, and the people who have picked it up and read it have been like, oh my gosh, I read this in like 2 sittings because it's so good. Really enjoyable. Lindsay, do you want to tell us about Possessing Jessie?
So Possessing Jessie is actually about 10 years old. I've actually weeded it out of my collection at this point, but still remember it, and it's creepy. Jessie's brother, the perfect child, dies. And then one day she comes down, her hair's cut, she's in his clothes, and mom's kind of perks up. But it turns out that the brother is starting to inhabit her body. So it is a really disturbing book. It's short, really disturbing as it goes on. And Jessie, it's a lot of who's going to end up being Jessie by the end of the book, she or Jason.
That is interesting. Wow, that sounds like a good one. Huh.
Yeah, I was shocked by how creepy it was, because it really, I mean, it's a super short book, and I'm like, same with your other one, it's just gonna be fluff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of disturbing.
There's
Love
actually a book I read as a kid, and I can't, or like as a teen, and I have no idea. Like, this is one of those librarian things. Someone will come and be like, I know this book, and have no way to describe it to you. Because all I remember was it was something like that. She learned about like astral projection or something. And then at one point while she was out of her body, a spirit took over her body. And so she's like watching this and has to try to get back into her body. I don't know if it was like a, who is that? Is it Christopher Pike or R.L. Stine or something like that? I have to look into who the author is. But when you're talking about it, it made me think of that. And like that is still to this day, how 30 some years later, I'm still like freaked out by it.
That's when you know you got a good one.
Speaking of a good one, you can't go wrong.
Absolutely.
Because I teach high school, any of my kids who say I want a scary book, this is what I hand them. I mean, I remember being a teenager reading it and swearing to God Pennywise was going to be at the end of my bed. Like, the original movie, while it's my favorite, doesn't do it justice. The newer ones are okay. This book is the definition of creepy and scary.
Yeah, this is a great one. I mean, pretty much any Stephen King is good, but this one is absolutely setting a very high bar for creeps. And it's funny, when the new movies came out, every kid came in asking, do we have this? I want to read this. So like, there's definitely that awareness that helps to kind of get it out there.
Yeah.
All right. So Kim couldn't be with us, but The Undrowned, K.R. Alexander, which is a real good horror writer here, comes up a lot. Story of a friendship gone wrong and the girl who has a twisted view of life. Samantha is a bully and Rachel, a former friend, is her favorite victim. After a violent confrontation, Rachel is dead because Samantha, in a rage, pushed her into a lake. Interesting. The Undrowned. Kind of sounds a little bit like Pet Sematary, talking about Stephen King. Love
Yeah,
it.
I'm curious about the age for that, just because I have a lot of KR Alexander books, and they're definitely middle grade. So I'll have to look for that one, because like it says right up at the top, from the author of The Collector, and The Collector is middle grade. Like, it's always been at our scholastic book fairs and stuff. So now it makes me wonder, oh gosh, what have I been putting out there? But also then it does make me wonder about this one. I mean, this one hasn't been on our book fair, so maybe it is for older kids. So I'm curious. I'm going to look into it.
There's definitely some authors who write at multiple levels. So I don't know those works very well, so I don't feel qualified to say, but definitely worth checking out. And then we've got Ablaze by Christopher Cravatin. That's not a name I know, but let's see. Allie Thielen doesn't understand what's happening to her. She comes from a very normal family and lives a very normal life. There's only one thing off. When Allie gets angry, things burst into flame. Allie doesn't feel she's in control of this, but as the fires get better and the stakes get higher, something has to be done, because it's not just flames Allie's unleashing, it's evil. Ooh, I like that right up. Very Firestarter sort of vibes there. Hard to get away from Stephen King when you're in horror stories. Anybody else have a YA title they want to toss out? All right, then there is a section at the end just for fun that's probably maybe not for our students, but maybe if we just like to read something on our own. I put in The Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is another twofer because it's Native American, but it's also got some horror elements to it. And it's set in our world, but sort of in the future, after climate change has basically covered most of the land of the US underwater. The only places that aren't underwater are places that were Native American reservations. Because of where they were located, the water couldn't reach them. So it's a really interesting story, because the idea is that part of this change lines up with Native American mythology, but it comes to life. And the Native American gods actually start showing up and walking around on Earth and causing all sorts of problems. And the main character of this book is basically a hunter of the supernatural. She's been trained how to kind of take out supernatural threats. And so she kind of gets pulled into looking into some stuff that is going on in the area that she really doesn't want to be part of, but kind of gets forced to look into. Really enjoyable read. I haven't gotten to the sequel yet, but the first book was really good.
So I have to tell you about that series. It never left my shelves. But last year for Poetry Month, I did blackout poetry with my seniors. And that series is some of the books I sliced up. And my kids still come back looking for those pages so they can do them. Couldn't get them to read the book. They love the pages.
The writing is so good. It's got so many great elements to it. I love that idea. That's a great idea. Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This got turned into an M. Night Shyamalan film this past year. And I can't remember now what the name of the film is, but it's something about the cabin in the woods or something like that. And the book is so much better. It is about a family, two dads and their adopted daughter. They're at a cabin in the woods. The dads are out back sitting on the porch having a drink. The kid is out front playing, and this guy comes up and starts talking to the kid. Thank you, knock at the cabin. Yes, thank you, Jill. And in talking to the girl, he starts kind of talking about, well, sometimes you have to do things, it's nice to, he like makes friends with her, but then he's like, sometimes you have to do things for your friends and help them out. And you're like, oh, this is not going to a good place. And suddenly these other people start walking out of the woods toward the cabin. And so the girl runs inside, and these people, there's a group of them that are all together that besiege this family, and they have this belief that the world is going to end if they don't do a certain ritual. And the book is just incredibly tense. It's all set in this one cabin. It's like a bottle episode story, and the ending is just the ending is left purposely ambiguous, so you don't know if what these people were saying was going to happen is actually happening, or if it's just like some things that happen to line up with their crazy thoughts. So it's wonderfully creepy and scary, and I love that ambiguous end myself. Anybody else have a title that they want to share that's just a fun book?
That is so not my genre. So like I'll do what I can for my students, but oof, I cannot read a creepy book myself. So
I used to read a lot of Dean Koontz and stuff, and now it's like I can't do it. I don't know if it's too much of my husband being away in the military, me being alone, but like I read something and I'm like a child again, literally running to my bed and jumping to get into bed so that, a monster doesn't grab my feet. And I got myself convinced. I like went outside and it was dark, and then I got myself convinced it was like The Walking Dead out there and there were zombies, and I was so scared, and I was just like trying to chuck something to the garbage from like my house because I couldn't go outside because the zombies are gonna get, like, I get myself convinced. I don't know, it's too real.
I've definitely the past couple of years have had to step away from some of the horror stuff. Some of the more realistic horror stuff has just been too much for me, but I just started reading Stephen King's new book, and it's got the first chapter is chilling, and it's very much not a supernaturally chilling. It's like a crazy people doing terrible things chilling. And I'm trying to decide if I can continue reading this book or not. But he's so good. It's hard to put his stuff down. But anyway, that's actually pretty much our hour. So thank you all so much for coming. I hope that you heard some titles that might be useful to you. I know I've got several things I put on my TBR list. I will share out the slides. I'm going to leave them open to editing because I think a couple people said they want to add a couple of things, which is great. And then in maybe a couple of days, I will shut it down to editing, but I'll share out the link so you can see, here's what we talked about in case you need to refer back. And that's about all we've got for this one. We have our next PD event is going to be November 20th, 7 p.m. It's a Monday. And we're going to have one of our PD committee members, Kim Malloy Chapman, is going to be telling us about the book clubs that she set up in her school and some things that have worked really well. And we're going to invite people to share their thoughts and experiences on book clubs too. So if you can make it, that's great. I should throw the link into the chat in case you want to actually sign up for that. It is bit.ly/November 2023 book clubs, I think. Let me just check this before I actually share that with you, because if I'm sharing the wrong link, that would not be great. Throw that over here. Nope, that's not it. Is it this? Glad that I checked that, and I know it's not that. One more time. Let's see. Come on, work for me here. Nope. Okay. Oh, no, that's not it. Okay, I'll have to look it up. I'll include it in the email that I'm going to send. That'll have the link for the PD certificate quiz thing to take care of. And yeah, if you've got other thoughts or ideas, if there's PD you would like to see, let us know. We'd love to know your thoughts. And I think that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
thank you, Steve. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.